So the complaints, I want to digest them a little bit more, and it's a lot of information to extract from the raw data into usable information. But it's both for and against open street. So when this first happened back in May, June, we were seeing a lot of complaints about a block party atmosphere, and actually it was accomplishing the opposite. Instead of people spreading out, they were crowding around bars and restaurants. So we were seeing a lot of complaints about that. Also, going along with that, loud music complaints, sanitation complaints, and then it became people not being able to get through the streets to park their cars, that the barriers were either not in place in time or they were left up past the 8 p.m. time, which allowed these groups to congregate. So my position has always been, and I've met with some of the shareholders here, we want to do whatever is best for the community, and we'll cooperate in however that looks, based on a consensus of both people that are for open streets and people that, aren't big fans of open streets.
And those 311 complaints, Captain, were they primarily back in the spring, or just over the summer, or is it continuing? What's your sense of the chunks of time?
It still is continuing, but obviously when the weather was nicer, there were more complaints. So like I said, we are working on using the 311 data to digest it a little bit more, because we get like basically a raw data dump, and we had like over 800 complaints from April up until we ran it through December, the end of December. So actually it was through, I'll give you it right now. It's through December 20th. So, and that was just, I had them start just with Berry Street because that represents the largest open street that we have. So, yeah, I mean, definitely they are not as high as they were, but we are still receiving them, especially the loud music, social distancing complaints. Those are still, we're still receiving those in crowds.
And have you had any issues with response times on any of the open streets, or transiting the precinct, having to use other routes, or any kind of logistical structural problems?
The problem we've seen, and we kind of continue to see, I've brought it up several times in meetings with different shareholders. Certain streets are blocked with 2 barricades, and it was supposed to just be 1. It's not just a response time problem from a police department standpoint, emergency vehicles. So we have fielded a number of complaints regarding having to stop at every block and have somebody get out of the car to move one or the other barrier. So, I think that we work around it. Most of the time in the police cars, we have partners so that they can jump out and move it. But certainly if there's a medical emergency, I would, just from my own personal experience driving around that stretch, it would have to be their ability to get there in a quick response for somebody that's in a medical emergency.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from the committee have a question for Captain Fahey? Go ahead, Ryan.
So I wanted to follow up on the complaints, because I live at Metropolitan and Barry, and what I've seen a lot is NYPD going the wrong way down Barry as fast as they want. I've never seen what you're describing. So I was just curious, I assume in any emergency, the cars can drive however they want, because what I've seen when they've gone fast, they've driven off the wrong way down Barry, no worries. And sometimes it's been easier because there was no traffic, no cars. Like, I've seen the police responding to emergency when it's gridlock everywhere else, go down the open street because that was the clear way. So again, I just wonder how these complaints and things are documented, so it's not just hyperbole and back and forth. We write down like this incident this day, so we can go back and look in the date and see if there's like other factors at play. It just, I don't know.
Listen, I'm happy to conduct a more thorough analytical study about this. For instance, we can take 911 calls and I can go back and look at the AVLs in the cars to see where they'd have to slow down at each corner. If, again, I'm speaking just right now anecdotally from what I've seen and observed. We're happy to go out to the scene and take pictures of the setup, which I think we have some of those pictures. Initially when this was rolled out, the barrier is supposed to be staggered. There'll be one on one side of the block. Then you go to the next block, it's the other side to allow through traffic and things like that. Like I said, at this meeting, I don't have the more thorough analytics. Certainly I can't provide that for EMS response. You'd have to ask them. But we can go back and take a sampling of 911 calls that occurred on Berry Street, both before and after the open streets, if you're looking for more specific information, which I'm sure, would be more helpful than theoreticals.
I don't know if your best use of time is to do that, considering you're the NYPD captain, but I just wish we could figure out a way to look at this data, so we're looking at, like I said, like facts and things, and not just, again, right now us talking about mobs on the street. You get what I'm saying. I want us to talk about this with data and be like, is it slowing people down?
And listen, these are, there was news articles earlier on about the crowding. There were videos posted to social media showing the crowds around Cheeseboat and other locations over there. So there is, identifiable, observable, evidence that this crowding did occur. But listen, I have a staff that will do these analysis just so that everybody is fully informed and the community can make the best decision.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have video of the NYPD taking down and destroying the barriers and putting the legs in their thing and taking it. So I'm also concerned about when it's not being set up right. We also have NYPD officers that were completely disrespectful and don't like the program and sabotage it.
Listen, this was, I don't know if you've been at any of the meetings that I attended with Noel Hidalgo and Elizabeth Adams. There were a myriad of problems with this in the beginning. Throughout the city, not just in the 9-4 precinct. However, I believe that we've worked together. I've facilitated this program. I've worked very closely with Noel, ensuring that barriers were replaced. If you're referring to early on, there were times that myself or the executive officer would order the barriers removed, the legs removed, after we had been to these locations 3 and 4 times after 8 p.m. at night.
I see you, Kevin. Hang on. Anything else, Ryan?
Yeah, shoots. I just want to, the weekend that there was a giant motorcycle fiasco, the motorcycle people went down the middle of the night, stole every single barricade from like Broadway up, dumped them over the fence in the Bushwick Inlet Park, and it was volunteers that went and retrieved them, and the NYPD just sat and watched us and mocked us getting the thing. So I want to say that, like, while I appreciate the captain, I hope that she's, like, again, what I've seen from the regular NYPD, especially the 9-4, has been nothing but hatred and antagonism to this program. And I know that she's been wonderful and facilitated, but there was a time, like, again, I just want to, throw that out there, that there was sabotage in front of NYPD, and it was the volunteers that solved it.
So if the thing you're referring to was the day that Indian Ferry had their protest, I was on scene. We did take a criminal complaint for the vandalism that was done to the barriers.
Okay, thank you, Captain. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi. thank you for being here tonight. It means a lot to everybody here. You guys came out. I wanted to ask regarding the 311 data and the report. Are you able to commit to a time when that report will be ready, either next committee meeting or in time for the community board meeting? When can we expect sort of a more thorough analysis, as you referred to, Captain, for everyone to view?
So, like I said, I want this to not be something, I don't have a side either way, for whatever the community wants, and we will adjust accordingly in the 9-4 precinct. What would be helpful is if the committee has certain metrics that they would like to see, please weigh in on that. And, I would anticipate I wouldn't need more than a week to kind of look over this stuff and get the analysts to, make it more digestible than just, an Excel spreadsheet of a lot of data that doesn't really help us.
Okay, great. Thank you. And in addition, I wanted to voice support for Open Streets. I think it's a really great initiative. And that being not without its flaws. And I think that in terms of like the 2 barricades blocking off the entire street, that might be something that the Open Streets Committee is willing to work with to make sure that that is enforced better. But I personally use them all the time, and I think that they're great.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Anyone else committee for Captain Fahey? Okay, Ryan.
This is actually a question for her, but it's about transportation, but not necessarily this. But there was this a motorcyclist that was killed on Driggs and Metropolitan on July 25th by an NYPD SUV cruiser that was going through the light on the way to a call at Rice and Metropolitan. It's never said what precinct the officer came from. It said there's been an investigation going on, and that is the actual border between the 90 and 94. Both precincts respond, and I was wondering if there's any updates on that investigation.
The incident, I believe it's back in July.
Yeah, July 25th, Delroy Morris,
Okay.
Driggs Metropolitan.
That's, it's under, highway, the collision investigation squad. That is the unit handling the investigation. I believe it happened in the 9-4, but it was a 9-0 officer.
Thank you. And okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Eric, Captain Vasquez is a call-in.
Oh, great. Okay.
I have to unmute him.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Captain?
Hello.
Hi, Captain Vasquez. Thanks for coming. I'm sure you heard the questions I had for Captain Fahey, and they're pretty much the same for you. If you just want to give us an overall impression of how Open Streets is working for the 9-0, any challenges, concerns, and we're looking to go forward the spring, with some solutions that are coming from different agencies, so that we all are equally happy and sad at the same time. So I'll let you go ahead, and then we'll have some questions from the committee.
All right. Honestly, it hasn't really been an issue for us. Not really any 301 calls or complaints. The only issue we have seen is the barriers being broken, and we replaced them. So it really is just daily maintenance and making sure the barriers are up. And my cops are checking pretty much every tour to make sure everything's still there. But other than that, really no complaints on our side.
Okay, and I don't think you have as many open streets as 9-4 does.
We definitely. You hear me?
Go again.
Yeah, no, we don't have any we don't have many blocks, but it goes pretty much from Broadway to Metro, so it's only a few blocks, not like the 9-4. But like I said, we really haven't had any issues on Berry Street.
And what about any of the other streets? I think you have two others in the 9-0 over by Maria Hernandez, and isn't there another one over there?
Really, we haven't had any issues with our open streets as of yet.
Okay, great. Committee, anything for 9-0 on open streets? Besides Ryan, wait, hang on. Besides Ryan and Kevin, anybody? No? Aaron, are you waving your hand? Go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry. I mean, I'll just say, like, open streets are great, and we need to figure out ways to address things like barricades. Like, that's an easy, right? Like, that should be an easy thing to figure out, and to continue to support the infrastructure, to not focus on cars, but still allow for, you know, emergency vehicles to get through, that sort of thing. So yeah, just echoing what Eric, I think you said in terms of like how the committee can be helpful in making this program more successful.
Right, okay. Ryan, then Kevin. Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to read a question that came up in the chat. Has there been any enforcement of speeding on open streets throughout either district, either precinct rather?
I can send that data to the committee. I can have them I can probably have it for you tomorrow. I just don't have it with me at home.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
There was one more question, Eric, in the chat.
Go ahead,
We're gonna
Karen.
do that.
Yeah.
The question is, when Captain Fay, this is from John, when Captain Fay says NYPD took a criminal complaint associated with the Indian Larry event, does that mean that charges were filed?
We took a criminal complaint of criminal mischief, and it was referred obviously to the precinct detective squad. I can follow up with the squad commander and see the status of the case. I took a walk down there the day of. I saw the barriers over the fence. We did a camera canvas. There were not cameras right there in the immediate vicinity, but I can follow up and also let you know what the status of the case is.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, regarding who was responsible for it, we did ask people that were informing us about the incident. Nobody had any further information about, you know, anyone doing it or anything like that. So I ask help if anybody does have more probative information about who was responsible. You know, you can share it and we can take it from there.
Okay. Thank you, Captain. And if I have to post a report by next Monday, if there's any way that you could send that to the board office for the record. If not, we can put it in the record for the next meeting and follow up on that, but that'd be great.
I'll get it over.
Thank you very much. Kevin, since you're already kind of on the case, although any board member can do this, if you're monitoring the chat and I'm missing a question, usually I put this on Willis, but I'm going to give him a break tonight. Just to keep me posted on what's going on in the chat if I can't follow it, because I'm taking notes and doing 50 things at once. So thank you. All right. So that is, go ahead, Ryan.
I just wanted to ask the captain of the 9-0 if the officer that was driving the SUV that killed Delroy Morris is still driving while there's an investigation out. I'm just curious about that.
Actually, you hear me? Actually, that officer has been out sick with an injury for a while now, so he hasn't been on the streets.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go to FDNY and EMS. And Same question to either the commander or Ms. Sanchez. What you've heard from the houses in North Brooklyn? Have you had any delays in accessing either a fire condition or a medical emergency? Just any challenges or even things that are working for you with open streets in terms of access? Whoever, Commander Gannon or Ms. Sanchez, whoever wants to take it.
I definitely will allow Chief Gannon to reply because he's actually in operations and probably will, for the more notable fires, is responding and is responsible for the unit that responds to it. But I will say is that Open Streets was new to all city agencies for the most part, Open Streets, open restaurants. And one thing I can say just citywide, this is not an issue that is only relegated to Brooklyn Community Board 1. What we did have throughout the summer, and just ongoing, most certainly as it began, is that we had pretty much a citywide conference call, in particular more like interagency, where we would discuss issues that we would see as they would come up. And these are at the height of open restaurants and open streets. These calls happen every day. And then as we got more acclimated and more used to everything that was going on, I would say that happened every other day. Finally, we came to the point where we're at a week when we found a good rhythm, but this is something that there were many eyes on and many minds coming together to make sure that it ran smoothly and effectively. And oftentimes I think that it's easier said than done when dealing with several agencies at once. So I just want to commend not only you, but also all the other agencies that participated to make sure that open restaurants and open streets ran smoothly. So Chief Gannon, it's all yours.
Chief, I've unmuted you.
Okay, the chief will be having his other issue. Go ahead, Chief Gannon. Okay, let's come back to Chief Gannon. Maybe he's got some issues. Ms. Sanchez, can you mute?
Sure thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Ms. Sanchez, since the chief is having some issues, are there any committee members that have questions for FDNY EMS? No? Okay. Ms. Sanchez, as you're going forward, you said you're having these conversations citywide with multiple agencies, and that you're not really seeing any significant concerns up in North Brooklyn. Is there anything that would be helpful from, we have this community partnership here that's maintaining the barricades, and I don't know what interaction you've had with them or anyone or the chief has, but is there anything that you need from the community that would make it easier for you?
Thank you for your continued partnership. None at this time, but should there be any problems, areas, we always appreciate residents, community, our community associates really are the eyes on the street, because at any given time, this is your neighborhood, this is where you live, you work here, and then you may see something that may be problematic and may need a second look. Please feel free to share with me any intersection or any restaurant or street that you may think that this may be taking up too much space that, we don't want to wait till the point that there is an emergency and that's when our apparatus vehicle is coming down that road. Sometimes there are restaurants that may take advantage. So if you see something and, that may have your spidey senses tingling, please feel free to share with us. It is not an issue for us to go out to send our Bureau of Fire Investigation to make sure that they are adhering to the laws that are in place for open streets and open restaurants.
Okay, thank you. Chief Gannon, do we have you yet? Still in limbo. Okay. Committee had nothing for EMS or FDNY. I know that we have Stephen Caruso on from Department of Sanitation. Mr. Caruso, as I sent you concerns last week. There were a number of concerns about trash and litter from the Open Streets program, and also, just wondering what challenges the brush trucks have had in accessing barricades and open streets, and has there been a problem with alternate side parking not being, the times have changed, obviously, so that the 2-day streets are only getting cleaned at the end of the week, but with everything with COVID and folks not moving cars in general, just an assessment of how Open Streets is working for you, and then if you've received 311 calls and how you're dealing with them.
Hi, everybody. Stephen Caruso, Citywide Community Affairs Officer for the department. So as Eric had mentioned, there are a lot of logistical issues, and if you want to say kinks that need to be worked out whenever you're dealing with a program or initiative of this scale, especially whenever you have a lot of folks kind of congregating within a small area. I think naturally there's just going to be an increase in the amount of litter, right? But as Eric had stated, there is now a modified ASP plan. So the streets that the mechanical broom was once servicing twice a week are now only being serviced once a week. Along with that, obviously with the open streets, we do have a lot of structures and obstacles in the way of the mechanical broom. So at one time, whereas they may have been able to just make a straight pass down any street in particular, we'll just call it Berry Street. Now there are obstacles. Obviously, it takes a whole lot more time to finish the route and get through the segment. So I guess if I was to ask for anything from the community, it would just be some assistance with messaging. All right. We'd like to ask that motorists please move their cars for ASP on their scheduled day. We have noticed that there is non-compliance, not necessarily just in Brooklyn Community Board 1, but this is a citywide issue. I think folks seem to have gotten a little laxed with the additional level of discretion that we use when issuing parking violations at the beginning of the pandemic. And since then, we have noticed that folks don't seem to move their cars as often as they did. It could be confusion just because of the modified ASP plan. That I'm not sure of. But in any case, we do ask that you help us to just remind all the residents that it's in their own best interest to move their vehicles, because at the end of the day, we all really just want the same thing, right? We want to live and work in a nice, clean community, and especially in the commercial corridors, we want to keep it clean and inviting for all the customers. So with that being said, I think now more than ever, we are relying on residents and business owners to do their part as well. The onus has always been, and the responsibility has always been on the residents and the business owners to not only clean their sidewalk in their area, but also 18 inches out into the street as well. Maybe when we had the mechanical broom service 2+ days a week, there may not have been as much of a need for folks to do their part, but as I said, now more than ever, I think residents and business owners just need to be reminded that we're all responsible, and we really need them to uphold their end of the bargain. What we could do is we could have a supervisor ride with the groom and in any areas in particular that maybe you feel like we're not getting the compliance out of the motorists, or that maybe a little bit more, there may be some more litter than in some of the other open streets. That we could definitely do. It's just very difficult to allocate resources or supervisory resources to be with the mechanical grooms every single day on every single street that they're servicing. So if you could help me to narrow down areas that need a little bit extra attention, I'd be more than happy to assist with that. Now, as far as collection services go within the corridors of the open streets, we have moved a lot of those routes to be picked up at nighttime. So they're going to be picked up on the midnight to 8, or if they're serviced during the day, they're serviced as early in the morning as possible. And our dayline shift starts at 5 a.m. I do understand that there have been some issues with maybe some garbage that hasn't been collected, and the reason for that is because residents can be putting it behind some of these structures, and our collection crews aren't able to see the garbage, and if they can't see it, they don't know it's there. How are they going to service it, right? So maybe what we can do is just help me to get the word out with the residents that they should be using discretion if they feel like, hey, my garbage was missed once or twice because it was behind the structure. They could place it on the side of the structure, make it a little bit more visible for the collection crews. Again, they're working at night, so it could be difficult to see. It could be mistaken for commercial trash as well. And if you need any assistance, and if there are any areas in particular that maybe residents need some guidance, I would be more than happy to come out with an officer from the local district, and we could definitely give our professional opinion as to where the garbage should be placed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crusoe. Yeah, I think the majority of the concerns that we've heard have been Berry Street concerns and some West Street concerns. But yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. And if a supervisor could run that corridor sometime between now and either the February or the March meeting, we'd love to have data on that. Anybody else from the committee? Question for sanitation? No? Okay. Anything in the comments, Kevin, for sanitation? No. Okay. All right. Captain Vasquez, if you're still on the call, is he still here?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay, Captain, if I could just ask you to hang out through the meeting. We have items further down the agenda that are kind of specific to the 9-0. I just wanted to say that before you dropped out.
Okay, I'll be on.
Great, thank you very much.
Eric, I did have.
I'm sorry, who was that?
This is Kevin.
Go ahead.
If FDNY is still on the call, this might be kind of a silly question, but getting back to open streets for a second, and emergency vehicle response, are they able to, like, if they need to, like, go through like a barricade? Is that something that's possible to be done, or like would that damage their vehicles? Like I'm kind of unsure. Like it might sound like a silly, but like if there's an emergency that warrants it, right? Like, are they able to do that?
Can I tell you, Kevin? I've seen it happen. They do it. No, the barricade dies. Nothing happens to the sanitation truck. It's who I saw do it.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, especially ambulances. Those things are monster trucks, you know.
Yeah.
Worth an ask.
No, yeah.
Have you seen that recently, Ryan?
No. We sent right away the information right to the sanitation. It was immediately handled. But yes, no, I've never seen the fireman or ambulance do it, but I def saw the sanitation do it, and the truck survived fine.
In a situation like that, if you ever see a department vehicle being operated unsafe, please by all means you can send the information over to me, and I'll follow up with it.
Thanks, Mr. Caruso. Okay, Mr. Caruso, while I have you, so during the lockdown, this isn't really open streets specific, but it does, in terms of landlords that need to, and store operators that are responsible for their sidewalks. I live on a block that's resident owned. It's all HDFC, moderate income folks. And, we got hit with tickets every other week. We have bodegas on the corner that their trash flies everywhere, and it's a constant drama to keep them clean. And I've heard from other folks too in different parts of North Brooklyn that have had this issue for tickets. And I'm just wondering if you have any, if you could say anything to that.
Well, I could speak. I was a former field officer, so what happens is that we can only write a ticket for what we observe at that time, right? So if it's during the residential routing hour, those are the 2 hours a day where we could write a ticket for cleanliness. So that's going to be the dirty sidewalk or dirty area, or the not cleaning the 18 inches into the street. If we're driving within our sector or our section, and we happen to see litter built up in front of a home, most times what we're going to do is we're going to get out, we're going to take a look at it, we're going to see if it's matted or not. If it's matted, it seems as though there hasn't been an attempt to clean it. So we use discretion. That being said, the issue of it's not me that's throwing the litter on the ground, it's coming from somewhere else, is something that's brought up at almost every meeting that I attend. So it's most likely true that, yes, a lot of that litter probably could have come from the corner store. Folks walk out of the store, they throw their candy wrapper on the ground. Unfortunately, it ends up in front of your home or someone else's home. But at that time, as an officer, if I observe it in front of your residence, that's who you're going to get the ticket, which is unfortunate, but there's really no way of knowing where it originated from. And if we always just listen to the person as we're writing them a ticket and they say, oh, well, it's not mine, then I think at that point there really wouldn't be much enforcement at all. So with that, you could always present your case at oath, and you may have some luck with that, but otherwise we only write what we see at the time that we see it. If it's observed in front of a residence or a business during the routing hour, we can write it.
Okay, thank you. It just seemed like there were like a lot, like they were targeting the block or something. Like there were 3 within a 2-month period, which seems, just seems excessive. But we had not lately, and I just, wanted to make sure it wasn't, I don't know, some like regular ongoing thing, because the homeowners in my neighborhood do not have deep pockets, and it's an issue.
If you want to look at the street in particular and the date range, what I could do is I could try and go back and check the service request in the 311 system, and I may be able to see if 311 complaints were called in, which could be the reason why we would have responded and issued some violations also, especially if multiple tickets were written within a short period of time.
Like I said, it was during lockdown, so it was like back in like April, May, but we'll talk about it.
Sure.
Okay. Did I see someone waving their hand? Aaron? No? Okay. Okay, so Noel is also on the panel, and Noel, I don't know how much you've been dealing with the 9-0. I know you've had a deep relationship with Beth and Fahey in the 9-4. Just for the captains and Noel, if you want to talk about how, problems at the outset and like where we are now. I know we talked about this a little bit last month, but just to, get an update on how the departments are working with the community partners and that kind of, and that thing. Just go ahead, Noel.
Yep. Can you hear me? Yep. Great. Thanks. Hi, my name is Noel, or Noel Hidalgo. I'm a Gemini. I lovingly have 2 names. I'm one of the organizers for the North Brooklyn Community Coalition that is maintaining our open streets. For those of you who don't know, we stepped into the situation when the police department, which had been detailed to maintain the open street barriers, were essentially dealing with the protests. And we realized that there needed to be a community partner to help make sure that the barriers were being put up, taken down, and that they're being maintained. And so the Community Coalition really maintains two stretches, the stretch around McGolrick Park, which is Driggs and Russell, and Barry, and then at times we've been taking care of the Nassau stretch, though we've really handed that off to Lot Radio. And so, you know, the things that we've seen, one is just the willingness to meet with us and to support these operations. We know that this is a lot of manual labor, a lot of physical labor, and our precincts don't really have that labor to spare. We've been very fortunate to have developed a very complementary relationship with Captain Fahey and getting the barriers replaced. It sometimes has taken a while to get barriers from the barrier department, but Captain Fahey has been super responsive to making sure that when the barriers are destroyed by cars or trucks or other vehicles, that we have a supply that we can essentially replace them. The community really spends a lot of time maintaining these barriers. To some community members, they are like other children. And we're really concerned about the public safety aspect broadly, not only from making sure that our first responders have access to the street, but also making sure that these are safe places for people to get fresh air, which there is just, you know, like there's only a few spaces. This is a little over, I'm trying to get to my notes here. What we're talking about when we talk about open streets in North Brooklyn is about a little over 1.5 miles of streets. We're taking a look at, hold on a second here. This is, so what the complaints that we've heard that we've been trying to deal with are around the noise complaints. What we've done is that we've gone and talked to business owners. We've tried to develop relationships along Berry Street. We've tried to communicate that they are that they're at risk for losing their liquor license. We know that Teddy's specifically, the business owners and the partners at Teddy's have gone out to target that particular intersection. And they've done their own outreach, realizing that there was a hot spot that was being created by some noisy neighbors, and that if that continued, that there would be action. Eric, I wasn't really prepared to speak, but I will say that, you know, we've been very fortunate to have dedicated volunteers that go through and that make sure that the streets are accessible to people, that they're accessible to everyone, and that the barriers are up, that they are out of the crosswalk, that they're out of the curb cuts. I've seen the community complaints on Facebook and people posting photos of barriers thrown to the side or in the middle of curb cuts and trying to place the blame on the community organization. And the problem is that, you know, we are asking for a formal process, and I know that the DOT is here on this call, so that way we can actually get more resources, or better said is, so that way we can get appropriate resources for these open streets. The petition that we've put forth, and this is a question that I would like to pose to the, you know, to all of the first responders and then also to sanitation, is one idea that we've seen through this process is that when you remove the barriers or move the barriers enough so that way there's through vehicular traffic, that essentially motor vehicles are going to take advantage of that and continue to use it as a roadway, and that creates a lot of you know, personal safety issues when you have children who are learning to ride a bicycle, or you have neighbors in wheelchairs or in walkers who are enjoying the open streets. Just about every single vehicle that I've seen who's on the open street doesn't abide by the 5 mile per hour issue. I've driven cars on the open streets. I know what it's like to drive at 5 miles per hour. It's super, super slow. It's slower than a bicycle, right? Unlikely that we see these vehicles actually abiding by that speed limit. So the question is, in our petition, we have thought that if you alternated the directional nature of traffic along some of these long one-way streets, that you would prevent the through traffic nature. And how would the alternating of traffic through some of these one-way streets impact service delivery? I'm interested in understanding how, like, if let's say, imagine Berry Street, every other block is the traffic is going the opposite direction, so you cannot drive a vehicle through it. How would that impact the electric brooms and sanitation pickup? And the same question would go through the emergency response to FDNY, EMS, and NYPD. How would that impact response?
Well, speaking from a sanitation standpoint, I could absolutely say that it would slow us down, especially the mechanical broom service. It's difficult enough as it is now. If we were to change the street directions for every other segment, to have to continuously go around the block with all the traffic, we would never. It's difficult enough to finish the routes as they are now. I couldn't imagine having to do it if every other street was going in the opposite direction. I don't know if it would be operationally feasible from a sanitation standpoint, and also for safety reasons as well. You know, and DOT could probably speak to this better than I can, but I'm just not sure about the way the geography of the land and just the terrain in general, and the traffic lights and whatnot. I just don't know if that would be realistic, and it could be a safety issue also.
Thank you. Either of the captains or anyone from FDNY?
So, you know, again, as Ryan said earlier, in an emergency situation, the cops are going to get there as quickly as they can, as safely as they can. So, you know, outside of actual calls, you know, I'm going to say that it probably will have an impact on our response, but what that impact is it will, you know, only be seen once it's put into place.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to get you in because, you know, you are involved with this, and as long as we're talking to emergency services and sanitation, just wanted to, you know, keep that conversation going in a public forum here. So you didn't need to be prepared. You did fine. Thank you.
I will just add the few things is that, you know, we have worked with sanitation to get collection picked up. You know, we have seen, I live next to McGolrick Park. What I have seen is on the park side, the electric broom is not going around necessarily around the park, but that's like on regular streets. That's not just on open streets. But otherwise, you know, like there's been a complementary relationship with all the different agencies and addressing the issues as they've come up. And we do recognize that this is literally, we've had to boot this up with almost zero coordination. And, you know, there's been many entities that have kind of worked together to address the fact that we traditionally are people who do not talk to each other, but we've had to forge relationships to talk about the issues and come up with compromises. You know, the biggest issue that we see is when it comes down to public safety on these open streets is the fact that Berry and Driggs are continuous roadways. And when people are using them and the barriers are gone, that vehicles will come down them faster than 5 miles per hour. And when they are successful, they are successful when a majority of traffic is limited. And so we are really looking forward to working with all parties involved to figure out and how to bring our boots on the ground approach for being out in the street and maintaining these barriers. We want to see this a successful program. We're only talking about 1.5 miles here, which is 2.2% of all streets in Community Board 1. There is 63 times more, North Brooklyn's areas dedicated to vehicles is 63 more times than any of the parks or green spaces in our neighborhood. 67% of North Brooklyn residents don't have a car. We're talking about a virus that is transmitted by being indoors and breathing other people's air. What we want is more public space, and the only place that we can get that is from our streets. And we just need to figure out a way so that way we can have these streets that are safe for all types of road users. I've seen people in wheelchairs and walkers. I've seen kids learning how to ride a bike. Like these are places where people are congregating. And I know that we just want the safety of our community, and the Open Streets Community Coalition is right there with you. And we're looking forward to figuring out how to address these issues.
Okay, thank you, Noel. Did we ever get Captain Gannon set up? I see him there, but I don't know if he can hear us or can we hear him?
His mic is open. I don't hear from him.
Yeah, I see it. Okay. All right. Committee, any questions for any of the agencies? But we've kind of left DOT out of it. Kyle is good enough to join us at the last minute, and let me bring this up. So back when the open streets were initially assigned, there were some concerns that nobody spoke to NYPD or FDNY before the streets were actually implemented. I don't think that that's going to be happening in this new round, but just want to open it up to either of the captains or Kyle to talk about, as new streets are proposed, what are you reaching out to NYPD for logistic or sanitation or FDNY? Anything like that. Kyle, I'll send it to you, but then if either of the captains want to weigh in, would be interested to hear.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and for joining us tonight to talk about open streets. So I'll just give a little update also as to where we're at right now, specific to the open streets in North Brooklyn, since these ones are actually unique compared to all the other open streets across New York City, so you're special. We released a survey that probably many of you have already received. If you haven't, I'm going to drop it in the chat, and then of course we're happy to share with the community board and everyone else. But there's a community survey that's been put together for anyone to give feedback about all the open streets that we've identified as maybe somewhere that has some potential for some permanent enhancements, at least in the short term. And that includes Berry Street, Driggs Ave, NASA Ave, and Sharon Street. So anyone can fill out that feedback survey and just let us know how they thought things went, and just give specific observations and anecdotes and analysis, anything and everything if they want to include in that survey can be done. There's also an opportunity for folks to start to think more broadly about what specific opportunities exist on these corridors. We've seen a lot of success, honestly, from these open streets. We consider Berry Street one of our flagship open streets, and we really have got a lot of positive commentary on it so far. The survey so far has about 300 responses, which of course is nowhere near the amount of people that we want to engage with throughout this process, but we're happy to hear from everyone across the community on this survey. So once I'm done giving my spiel about Open Streets, I'll drop all of those surveys links in the comments. One thing I also want to let folks know is that they're translated into Spanish and Polish. And we also have a phone number opportunity for people to call and take the survey. I know at the last meeting that we had, I believe at the beginning of December, some folks, there was definitely a digital divide as to how we were doing outreach. We're all cognizant of the fact of the significant restrictions of face-to-face interactions are really hard right now, and it's going to be the norm for at least the next couple of months still. But we really do want to make sure that this is an inclusive engagement process. So the first step is at least having that phone number option for people to call, and I'll also put that in the chat for folks to share. Our preference is that people do take the survey online if they are able to do so using the link, so we don't overwhelm our customer service line. So I'll drop all that in the specific chat in a second. As it pertains to new open streets, I think we have enough on the ground right now, and we're really trying to suss out the best ways to manage them, and that's why we're committing to this specific outreach process for the streets that I just spoke about, to really identify what opportunities, like I said, exist. We don't really have plans as of today to explore adding any new ones. But if we were to want to add any new ones, or of course amend any of the existing open streets, we would work in close coordination with all of our city agency partners, as we have done throughout this entire pandemic, NYPD, Fire Department, DSNY, SBS, everyone in between. This has been a really great opportunity for civil servants to come together when we're a lot of times very siloed. So that sort of coordination will continue on. And I think that we're in a really exciting opportunity that, people really want their streets to be safer, but there's also a lot of considerations that we have to take into account. Lots of folks have talked about being able to park. Accessibility is, of course, a major consideration and a paramount consideration for DOT, as well as emergency services access. We are thinking right now about the best ways to have gateway treatments, is what we call them, which is the alternative to the barricade that meets a lot of the different variables that we're talking about, making sure that emergency vehicles can get through easily, but it doesn't allow just through traffic to come through. So there's a lot of operational items that we have to talk about. And then also simultaneously, we have to think more broadly about how are we going to support community partners that are taking this on? Noel and the entire North Brooklyn Open Streets Community Coalition have literally been some of the best partners that we've been able to work with, and have invested so much of their own time and energy and even funds in making this happen. And where DOT is able to support these partners, we have been able to do so. I will say that one of the biggest changes that we are trying to queue up for the open streets, Barry, Driggs, NASA, Sharon, is changing all of the barricades to metal barricades that will have official DOT signage on them. We know everyone loves the metal barricades a lot more. They're easier to manage, they're more durable, and things like that. So that's an update we're looking to do sometime over the next couple of weeks. And as that comes together, we'll definitely keep you updated. So that's the basic updates on everything related to the North Brooklyn Open Streets from DOT right now.
Karen?
As far as outreach for the survey, has there been like lit drops? Are you guys putting flyers, mailers in people's mailboxes?
So myself and my colleague Jessica, whose birthday is today, who's not here, but we actually went door to door along all of these corridors last week. We gave the businesses merchant surveys, so there's also a merchant survey for businesses to take. We also gave them copies of the community, the flyer that advertises the community flyer. We did not have the Spanish and Polish survey flyers printed up just yet, but we will be distributing those next week once they're printed later this week. And we did actually go into some it is hard for us to get into residential buildings, admittedly. But we did actually go into a couple that there was someone just there or there was a doorman, what have you. But we're definitely going to do a few more sweeps over the next couple of weeks as we get these translated flyers put together and just to do our due diligence. But we are also, happy to go anywhere that anyone wants to make suggestions about places where we could flyer. Like I said, it's very hard for us to do person-to-person engagement, but if there's like a community champion that that can really disseminate information really well, especially to hard to reach groups, please connect them to myself or Rhonda, and we're happy to connect with them too and talk more about this.
Yeah, that would be good, especially if you guys could get the Polish translated ones, and make sure that outreach is done. I think that's important. I have another question regarding the speeding. It was mentioned that there's speeding happening. Are they like moving the barricades to go park? Like, in the incidents that people saw, can you take a picture of it? Is there any way that enforcement could ticket them if somebody has like a video of the speeding? I'm just concerned because they're not supposed to be going down these streets unless if they're going to park. Am I correct? So I guess maybe that's a enforcement NYPD question, but
Yeah, I'll leave the
And wait, is the speeding happening after 8 o'clock? Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, sorry. So the enforcement piece, I'll leave to NYPD. I will say generally, though, I think as it pertains to a lot of the open series programs, we'll call them open streets, open restaurants, there is a little bit more of a light touch enforcement, but I'll let NYPD talk more about that. But as it pertains to what the specific access restrictions are for open streets, it's broadly defined as no through traffic or local access only. So that would be someone who wants to park, someone who's dropping off someone in an Uber, if you are making a local delivery, assess a ride, emergency vehicles, of course. I will say to Noel's point, I was walking on Barry last week myself, and there is speeding as a concern and people not respecting the barricades, and that's why I think it really has a lot to do with trying to refine these gateway treatments to try at least from the front end to sort of deter as much through traffic as we possibly can.
so again, they're moving the barricade and then they're speeding because then there's.
I think it's maybe there's some other folks who want to give some other observations, but I think it's both. It's they move the barricades and then just floor it down the block. As we've defined, some folks are a little bit ambitious and take it upon themselves to just ram right through the barricades, but it's a little bit of the Wild West sometimes.
And then the second part is there anything that we could do as far as NYPD to make sure that this doesn't happen, or if they could get ticketed afterwards if there was proof?
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part of your question. Your microphone went out.
It was the question is more for NYPD as far as the enforcement. If there was proof of someone that was actually speeding or driving recklessly down the open streets, is there anything that we could do? If we had proof or a license plate number, something like that. That's my question.
Hi, Karen. So what we saw citywide with COVID and less people being on the street, there was speeding happening in greater numbers. So what we're trying to do is address it through initiatives. I use my traffic safety team, as I'm sure Captain Vasquez does as well. We address speeding as a whole all over the commands. I'm happy, I'm sure he would be too. We could have the traffic teams conduct initiatives on the open streets. But what happens is when the cops are there, people probably aren't going to do the things that are being complained of. So, we can, as far as like if you get video of it and it's reckless driving, that's something we can take to the DA's office and see if they would be interested in prosecuting any of these people. But that would be a conversation for the district attorney and whether they'd be willing. You'd probably need a lot of video of the person going down multiple streets. I don't know if they would aggressively enforce something as a traffic misdemeanor versus the violation. And we probably in this climate would run into problems with the officer trying to write the summons based on a video that you turn in, because it's something that they have to swear to, and them not being on the scene is going to impede their ability to identify the motorist. So speed cameras, maybe another, DOT could talk about that. That could be, I don't know if it's even possible to gauge them to the 5 mile an hour speed limit. No? Okay.
Technically speaking, I know this is not going to be welcome news, but 5 miles per hour is an advisory speed limit. Citywide, our speed limit is 25 miles per hour, otherwise, unless indicated. So technically, we can't enforce 5 miles per hour either.
So that's where I'm not even sure. I reached out to see if we were given a traffic code to enforce that along, like we have our regular speeding enforcement, but that is based on the 25 mile an hour city limit and the highway posted limit. So, quite frankly, I'd have to get further clarification if my officers are even in a position to enforce this right now.
Okay, thank you, Captain Fay. And Captain Vasquez, if you want to weigh in on that, and we can take this as follow-up to anything that you can give to us after this meeting, captains, both of you.
Just to piggyback on what Captain Fay was saying, it's very difficult to enforce summonses unless the officer's on scene and witnesses a violation in person. Even if you have video, stuff like that, you gotta be able to identify the driver, which is almost impossible. But just like Captain Fay said, with the 5 miles per hour speed limit, that's not really a actual law that we can enforce. I don't know if there's signs posted. Maybe we could get some signs from DOT, temporary signs just put down, 5 miles per hour. I don't think people really know that are traveling through the city that approach these open streets that they're supposed to be going 5 miles per hour. I don't think they realize that, or that they can't move the barrier. So maybe some signs posted could help. But enforcement-wise, it's very difficult for us to enforce that.
Okay, thank you, Captain.
This is Noel.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to know, we've worked with the DOT to get three, I guess they're 3 foot by 4 foot, or maybe 2 foot by 3.5 foot, corrugated plastic neon yellow signs that say no through traffic at 5 miles per hour. They are pretty much situated. We've pulled money out of our own pockets, I think, to maintain the barricades and to put up all the required DOT signage. We've spent close to $1,000. So just about every single intersection should have a bright yellow neon sign that pretty much has the rules of the quote unquote road or street. And sadly, it is. The gas pedal is just such an easy thing to tap, and you're immediately over that 5 miles per hour. It is really a sad thing to see vehicles going down these streets at some of the rates that they go down. Some of the open streets, particularly like Russell, where we have the infamous painted flower barricade. All it takes is just one driver to move the barricade aside, and that becomes a throughway from Meeker all the way to Greenpoint Avenue. We've been fortunate to get speed bumps on some of the other through streets around McGolrick Park, which slow people down, particularly around the elementary schools. But on Russell Street in particular, it just becomes like, if you're standing there on Russell in front of the Park Church Co-op, you'll just see cars zipping down trying to bypass McGinnis to get to Greenpoint Avenue and then go up to Queens. That, the barriers, the signage, we can do all of this work, and drivers will still abuse the privilege of being on these open streets. And so what we're asking for is just, to do the work that needs to be done, which is to redesign these streets so that way they are safe for pedestrians and for vulnerable road users. That is the one thing that we're asking for. We're not asking for law enforcement to be in ticketing people. We think that law enforcement's role is someplace else. this is really a design issue, and we really, really want our streets to be designed to be safe for the most vulnerable road users, particularly on these open streets.
Okay, thank you. So we are running long on this item, and we do have other questions for NYPD. I really want to thank all the emergency services for taking the time to come tonight. I know it's a lot, and thank you also sanitation for coming. I would like to follow up with each of you over the next 2 months as to anything that you're seeing. Maybe to invite you back for another meeting that will not be as this long, I hope. But there will be questions that we'll be submitting based on this conversation for answers on the record. And if the committee has nothing, I know Ryan's waving her hand, but Ryan, you have to be quick. No, you're good. Okay, good. Okay, good. So yes, who needed to? Did I hear somebody?
This is Willis.
Hi, Willis. Go ahead, quick.
Just real quick, this was in the chat. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff, especially from Paul about more illegal behavior, people driving backwards. But also, there's a question about the open street that was on Grattan and why it was removed, because it still shows up on Google Maps.
So that is a partner managed open street, managed by the restaurant Pine Box Rock Shop. And I will follow up with them tomorrow. As far as I know, that is still an open street. They had a Halloween event, and that was the last time I spoke with them. So let me follow up, and then we will connect with the board just to let you all know what the status is. And also, sir, one last thing I just wanted to mention is that I did drop the English, Spanish, and Polish survey links and my email. Feel free to email me, like I said, with any individuals or organizations that we should connect with. And thanks so much. Have a great night.
Saw that, Kyle. Thanks. And Kyle, thanks for making time at the last minute. I'm sorry you got lost in the shuffle there over the holidays and everything else, but I really appreciate your being here and Rhonda's being here. Okay, with that, for those, and Will, thanks for that. I saw that too, and I'm glad you circled back on that. We'll make the survey links available as part of the report, and then we'll send that to the community board for distribution. Just one thing with the survey, I had a problem submitting it. I answered all the questions, even though they didn't really apply to me, because I don't really use open streets for that purpose. It's usually I need to get to Whole Foods or I need to access one of those streets for business. But I will try it again later, but just to let you know, there may be some glitches with submitting the form.
Sometimes if you accidentally click like the add other or comment or whatever, it's SurveyMonkey is, I will admit, is like the least easy to use surveying platform, but it is what it is. So we, if you do have specific issues, I'm happy to send anyone a Word copy of it and we can input it later too. So that's also another way to get with us.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. Just putting that on your radar. Okay, so for anybody listening on the call, if we didn't get to you, I'm sorry. Please submit questions to the community board office to my attention for follow-up. I will try to get you an answer from departments where appropriate. Okay. Go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
Did anyone sign up to speak? Or?
Well, we don't do signups. We just kind of go by. Am I missing something?
No, we didn't give any opportunity for the public to speak. It's only been panelists and committee members. I'm just asking if anyone requested to speak.
Wait a minute. We've been reading the comments off the chat, and I haven't seen any hands raised in the chat, but if I'm missing something, please let me know.
I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to move on.
Oh, I see this. Francoise had something, and I just saw her response. There's a Monica that wanted to weigh in. Is there a Monica in the chat? or on the phone that I'm missing? Anybody?
Victoria Cambranes has her hand raised as well.
I opened up her microphone. She was in the attendee list.
Okay. Sorry for that. Go ahead. We're talking about Monica or Victoria?
Monica.
Okay. Monica, you want to go ahead?
Oh, geez.
Okay. Can I just get your last name for the record? Hello?
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, I got your name. Okay. Monica Bellino. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I live on Russell Street, actually between Driggs and Nassau. So I am on the open street. And I just had a question. I really appreciate having FDNY here tonight and the police. One of my big questions has been egress of the fire trucks coming through, the ambulances coming through. I have had the good fortune of working from home part of the time. So I see Russell Street a lot. And I've seen ambulances literally stop to move the barricades more than once. I've seen fire trucks do that. And so that's concerning. I'm glad to know that they can maybe blast through the barricades if they need to. But I think I would be curious to know through DOT whoever monitors this, what is the egress that's needed for the barricades? I would like to know, one, why are there two barricades on Russell Street when I know Berry Street only has one barricade across what seems to be a larger street? Often that's a problem. The two barricades are put kissing, pretty much to curb to curb, so there's no egress at all. And I thought my understanding was that when cars come through, they should not have to get out of the vehicle to move the barricade to pass through. If they're doing a drop off, if it's an emergency vehicle, whatnot, if they're local traffic, you should not have to leave your vehicle where you may have a small child in the car, an animal in the car. You shouldn't have to leave your vehicle for convenience. And obviously an emergency vehicle should not have to leave their car to move a barricade. So I thought there should be some kind of egress always there. I know that people may move the barricade incorrectly. So could there be signage placed on the barricade itself, educating people who are moving the barricade? And then the other point I just wanted to make was, as far as Russell Street, we are on a park. There is a lot of open space in the park. There are places you can have people ride bikes there. I do that myself. You can you do whatever you need to do on the street in the park. So I know other streets have different missions, but for Russell Street, I don't see the point. There is literally hardly anyone on that street. I'm too busy to stand there and monitor this on a daily basis. But anecdotally, looking out of my window all day, there's nobody on the street. They're in the park or on the sidewalks. So I was just wondering if we could maybe take Russell Street off the table, because I don't see, in Driggs as well, it's alongside a park. So I don't see the point of that. Thank you so much.
Just a point. Originally, part of the open streets was intentionally to put them near parks, if I'm not wrong, to actually increase the space around the park and to do social distancing. So having the open streets by the parks is actually by design. If I'm not wrong, please correct me if I am, Kyle. But I mean, I have issues with Driggs as well. I think it's too long, starting from Kingsland not Kingsland, Morgan.
And thank you for bringing up Morgan. That was another thing too. Just if maybe someone can have some insight down the road, if someone can monitor that. I don't know if cameras or somebody stationed there. But I walked by there and off of Morgan, that comes off the BQE. So I saw cars expecting to be able to turn, and they can't. And so thankfully no accidents have happened yet. But that's the whole thing I wonder about a lot of these places is, when is it going to be that we have a horrible accident and that could have been prevented by having some foresight? So I saw a lot of cars, they have to stop. There's a barricade right there where you expect you can turn. Instead, they shoot down Meeker instead of turning into where they need to go. So I just wanted to bring that up too. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Any of the enforcement agencies or DOT want to address any of that?
The only thing I'll say is that, like I said, we're working on new signage that hopefully will be deployed in the next couple of weeks. I do understand the inconvenience of having to move a barricade sometimes. I will say for everyday drivers, I realistically that might be something that you'll have to do just in New York City. We don't design for convenience; we design for safety. But we also are cognizant of the fact that, like you said, people have specific restrictions, and there's different things to consider. We, like I said, emergency service access is our paramount concern, and I think that we heard from both the fire department and the New York NYPD tonight that NYPD said if they have to get to where they got to go, they got to go. And so far, fire department, we've worked very closely with them on any specific issues. I've been at many of the meetings specific to open streets and open restaurants. And when we've had issues with emergency egress, we've swooped in as quick as we possibly can to sort of ameliorate them as best as we possibly can. But this is, this street is also a living being. And as Noel also said, there's a lot of design opportunities here to enhance the public realm, make the streets safer, and then also consider people's local access needs, emergency access needs, things like that.
Okay, and Ms. Sanchez, her concerns about, we kind of addressed this earlier, but having buses or fire trucks having to move barriers. Did we lose Ms. Sanchez?
Give me a second, hold on. I apologize. I was having a little bit of technical difficulties, the virtual world. Maybe repeat the last question for me?
Yeah, it was just Monica had a concern. She lives on Russell Street, and she's seen EMS buses have to get out to move barricades a couple times.
Okay, oh no, then I didn't hear that part. Okay, not a problem. So I took down that location. I will definitely follow up with that EMS commander to see how often that has been happening. I know that there was a committee member that, that asked if we're able to get through. Yes, we're if need be, but that's never our option. That first option to barrel through the barricades is not the one that we go with and that we use. We seldom use, if we do use it at all. I will certainly double check to see how often and if that indeed has impeded. Because the truth of the matter is that seconds count. And we value and we see the importance in the life of the person or persons that we are heading towards, or that we are getting them to more help and more aid through the hospital system as well. So we want to do that as expedient as possible in that process. So I will double check with our EMS commander. And again, constant conversation. So should it come up, I'll circle back with you. But that's something that we will just mark to make sure that we are practicing proper safety.
Okay, that's great, Ms. Sanchez. I'll email you after the meeting just to follow up on that. We'll get that feedback.
Great. And if there are any other little problematic locations that may come from committee members, board members as well, please feel free to email me as well.
Will do. Thank you very much.
There are some board members who have their hands raised, and there's also attendees that have their hands raised.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep going. Kevin, I see you. Let's get some of the public in.
Yeah, please let's get the public in, please, or anyone that didn't speak, please.
Okay, so I have Francoise. I don't see the hands up, so I'm sorry, I'm missing it. Tell me who's on the public that needs to speak, please, somebody. Marie, maybe? I can't see it.
Kevin Lashera, Victoria Cambanis, and William Meehan.
Okay, so let's do it in that order. We'll do Kevin, Victoria, and William Meehan, and then we'll go back to the board. Is Kevin's mic open?
I'm looking for him right now. I don't see his hand anymore. Okay, he went up and down his hand. Kevin?
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to be putting my hand back up and down there, Marie. Sorry about that. Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Kevin. I live over on Mesrel Avenue. Spent an awful lot of time over the course of this summer, in McGolrick Park, and along that area along Russell Street. There's been community composting and parks stewardship and more mutual aid initiatives happening out of that side of McGolrick than I can count. And those routes along Driggs and particularly along Russell, with all due respect to the woman who says she's working from home over there, I have seen those spaces being utilized by quite an awful lot of people. Families with kids and plenty of folks, and that park has been plenty busy and plenty packed with folks that have been using it. I think it's important to note that North Brooklyn is some of the least amount of open space per person of any community in this whole city. And I think it's all well and good to say, well, people can go ahead and use the park, and they should be satisfied with the park. That park's been in place there since 1889. We're looking to utilize new open spaces, creative open spaces, not just ones that were established 130 years ago. And as for that Meeker Driggs stretch, talking about some of the advocacy that we've been doing along Meeker Avenue. Some of the Meeker Avenue is one of the worst corridors in this community in terms of accidents. One of the most dangerous corridors in communities. There's been an awful lot of conversation around that. And one of the things that, we've talked about before is that, folks will come off the highway, off the bridge, and come rolling like maniacs down Meeker Avenue. Or if they want to get and cut through to McGinnis, they'll go straight through Driggs. The dangers along Meeker are duplicated when Driggs is open that way. Folks will take that street at the same speed, and they're passing parks, they're passing schools, they're passing by residential businesses. And I think I'd be much more concerned about the potential for accidents there rather than, an incident where someone might slow down and say, okay, let me assess where I'm at, and carefully make my turn or go around or navigate. So I think that's just two things that I think are important. I know that we've discussed a public plaza there at that triangle slip. But, as someone who spent a lot of time over the course of the last 6 months on the Russell and Driggs open streets, utilizing them and seeing how many people in the community use them as an extension of McGolrick Park and as new, safe, open space in our neighborhood, I could not be more in favor of them. That's the open streets in general, but specifically in this instance, where kind of two things that I've been working on, and I've seen, which is that side of McGolrick Park, to the mutual aid work, and the Meeker Avenue work, that I just think that I want to provide some respectful, but some real pushback on what the woman that was on Russell had to say. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. We'll do Victoria.
Am I unmuted? Hi.
I hear you, Victoria. Go ahead.
How are all of you? I think you all know what I'm going to say. For me, this situation always comes down to who are we speaking to, and are we taking into account the voices of the community members who are most affected, who have the most to say in the community about these issues, and also that we are taking a breath of opinions about these situations. Because what I don't like to see is the undemocratic way that this program has really been rolled out. And, having the survey open to people in Polish and Spanish as of yesterday is a big problem. I speak to people up and down open streets. I don't live on an open street myself. But in terms of the people who do live on those open streets, it really has been the case that even if they do agree with the program, and I do like the idea of an open streets program, the way that their voices are being discounted is completely unacceptable. And that, I don't mean to say that to you directly, Eric, although your face is on the screen right now. But I mean to say that in general, Community Board 1 has a responsibility to listen to all voices in the community, and especially the voices of those who are most affected, who are getting sanitation tickets over and over again, as I have heard, who are cleaning up the streets 3-4 times a day, and who are generally disturbed by having an open street on their street. That is not to say that I'm completely against the program. It is to say, however, that we must speak to everyone. We must door knock not just on businesses, but also speaking to the landlords, speaking to the tenants, speaking to everyone who is affected on those streets. 300 responses is not enough responses. It's not even enough people to cover one New York City block. So this program extension needs to be reviewed very carefully. We need to have a diversity of opinions included in this, and for a democratic process to be rolled out, because I don't like the way this program is being handled. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points, Victoria. And I hope I addressed some of your concerns earlier. William, was it William that had his hand raised? Is that right?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I have some questions and concerns, especially for DOT. Part of it builds on what Victoria was saying about outreach to people. I am concerned that DOT has specifically called out reaching out to businesses, because as I understand it, business owners frequently are unaware that walkers and bikers are more likely to frequent and spend more money at their shops. And since they are drivers themselves driving to their businesses, are typically opposing to improvements for the actual people who live in the area. I'd like to see more DOT officials specifically handing out these flyers to people walking on Barry and using the open street, because I feel like I myself and other people walking Barry have gained the most from this. And I personally have a very vested interest in seeing more places for people to walk. My other concern and question for DOT is I want to know what the street design standards will be, because I've seen some of these shared streets, like the one near Grand Central, the one near Union Square, and they're not really designed for 5 miles an hour. I've seen people zoom at 20, 25, slaloming around the chicanes in the middle of the street. And I really want to know, how are we going to keep this at 5 miles an hour design and not just a speed limit, which is unenforceable. And I'd also like to point out that Barry is a redundant street. We have Kent and Wythe as a one-way pair. We have Bedford and Driggs as a one-way pair. Barry's an extra northbound street. It's only 400 feet over from Bedford. And really, given that we've got 200-foot blocks, we really shouldn't have to have an emergency service vehicle on Barry for more than one block. I understand sanitation, there's concerns there, but that's not a health or safety issue. So I'd like to point out that really, as long as the emergency vehicle can get on that one last block of Barry, I don't see any issue. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any issue with response times if they're only handling one block of an open street. I think this is a great asset to the community, and I'd love to see more open space and more open streets like it.
Okay, thank you, William. Francoise?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so just speaking about the outreach on Barry, and doing a lot of work with small business rent relief, and I was on Barry talking to basically all the shop owners and the bar owners. And, there's one shop in particular where an open street advocate went in and talked to them about open streets. And, it didn't affect her business actually at all. It didn't do anything to benefit her business. But, I think I think everyone is in agreement that we do need more open space. What troubled her was that her senior landlady who lives directly upstairs, no one knocked on that door. And, if you're right there talking to a business owner, it's so simple, or you can ask the business owner, hey, do you know who lives upstairs? And I think, I think a lot of people are having a similar comment that there really needs to be inclusive outreach, because at the end of the day, we are going to be in this same space in terms of a global pandemic and a year from now. So we have to create open space that works for everyone. In some places, that will be streets. I think we need to get more creative. And I also, just in terms of egress on West Street, one thing that we would always do is the barricades would be at an angle, and they wouldn't be kissing, so that there was always room for a car to very slowly work its way around. So maybe that's something that can kind of happen on some of the other streets. I would also love to know, someone was bringing up the speed bumps that are around McLauric Park. We've been trying to get them on West Street, and we're told that we can't get speed bumps. We've also realized that there are some on Java. Can DOT talk a little bit to the point of like, how do we get speed bumps in our community?
This is Rhonda from DOT,
Yeah.
and I did the walkthrough with you on West Street. When you say that you were told that you can't get speed humps, it's just that the speed hump studies are not happening right now. I'm not sure if there was another reason why you were told that West Street doesn't fit criteria for speed humps, but we're not doing speed hump studies right now. That program is on pause.
Okay, so just to clarify from our walkthrough, because I think it was the process is that no studies for stop signs or pedestrian crosswalks or speed bumps are going to be done until the pandemic is over. So, and that those studies can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. So if the pandemic is not going to be over for a year, we're really actually looking at any type of safety for pedestrians, and also we have a somewhat protected bike lane for our bike riders for about another 2.5 to 3 years.
So no one's told me that these studies aren't going to resume until the pandemic's over. All we know is that they remain on pause now, and part of it is because the personnel that deal with speed humps are reassigned to pandemic-related tasks and programs. But your statement that nothing's going to resume until the pandemic is over, no one told me that. So if you heard that from somebody else, then you have information that I don't have. Speed hump studies do take approximately 18 months, but that's not the case for all those other things that you like lumped into that same statement. Different studies take different lengths of time. Speed humps are among the studies that take the longest, and that's largely due to the popularity of the request for speed humps. Signal studies, stop sign studies take probably more like 9 months. So certainly not 18 months that I'm aware of. And the uncontrolled crosswalk, that's a whole nother issue, because in order for us to look at an uncontrolled crosswalk, first we would do a signal study. So the uncontrolled crosswalk study itself is a quick evaluation.
Okay, so I guess how quickly could we try to get some crosswalks put in on West?
Well, we're not doing that right now because we'd have to go through the proper evaluation. So you're not going to be able to get one now. That's true.
Okay, Francoise, I have to move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from the public for Open Streets comments? I don't know why I'm not seeing hands raised on the participant thing, but go ahead, Will.
There are two more people.
Okay, can you call?
Tom.
Tom, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thanks everyone for your time. I'm Tom Huji. I'm one of the co-chairs of the North Brooklyn Transportation Alternatives Activist Committee. I'm just chiming in to provide support for the program. The Activist Committee is fully in support of the Open Streets program, and we want to commend the North Brooklyn Open Streets Community Coalition for the hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteer hours that their dozens of volunteers have put in to support these programs. Respectfully, in response to one of the comments I heard from the public earlier, when we talk about like total community engagement, we need to acknowledge that car owners are a minority of New Yorkers, but historically have been overrepresented in the in the public conversations and the engagement that the city has provided. As I understand the history of New York City and the use of our streets for car traffic and for free parking really never had an open survey or a public engagement process. It was just imposed on our streets. And I think the Open Street program is trying to rewrite that history. I think it's an honest and it's a democratic attempt to reclaim our streets for the general public and not just the elites who can afford to own and maintain a car in such an expensive city as New York City. We think the current iteration of the Open Streets program is only a starting point. A New Yorker on foot or on a bicycle or in a personal mobility device should be able to traverse the entire city on a network of connected open streets without the threat of speeding drivers. We personally love the Community Coalition's idea of kind of flipping every other block, the directionality of every other block, so that a driver can't use the street as an open, as a through street. And that would actually solve the community concerns about the barriers, making it difficult for drivers who might not be able to access the street and can't physically leave their cars to move the barrier. And it would, you know, emergency responders would still be able to use the street for emergencies. So yeah, we just, with the activist committee wants streets that maximize the equitable distribution of our public space. And we think the Open Street program is the best community-driven solution we've seen so far. Thanks.
Thank you. Is that it, Will? Okay.
There's more hands. Two more, Heather and Ariel. I'm not sure if Ariel went already.
I don't think we've heard from Ariel. Okay. Ariel, then Heather.
Ariel, you're unmuted.
Am I still muted? Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. My name is Ariel Rivera, or Ari, and I just want to say that, you know, the Open Streets program has meant so much to me in a time where we really have to stay at home, and it's just been an opportunity for people of all ages, and I've seen actively in the streets from Driggs to Russell to Barry to convene in a safe way, exercise, for children to play. I've seen all sorts of activities. I can't speak enough how much it's meant to me to have the additional space. Just walking down Barry and seeing the impact it's had also even just on businesses to have the street space and a sense that it's safer to be there without presumably cars speeding by you. You know, that said, I look forward to seeing additional responses in the survey. It is important, you know, to have as much input from our community as possible. I also want to speak to just the fact that, especially in Driggs and Barry, I've seen cars really well above the 5 miles per hour. I realized just from this conversation that it can't be enforced, you know, that cars have to be just at 5. But I've volunteered with Open Streets Community Coalition in the past. I know that we're very grateful that DOT has shared some signage with us. I know that we'll be able to put together a group of people if we could just get as much signage as possible to encourage any awareness visually for both community members and just, you know, any drivers coming through. It can be really dangerous when you have the expectation of the street being open and a car is just busting through. It's a real concern of mine, and it's a shame because I know what a beautiful opportunity this has already been for all of us. I just wanted to speak to that. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Ariel. Heather? And yeah, Heather, hang on. So, you know, I'm sorry if people didn't get in, but we do have to move on. So Heather will be the last word from the public. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really don't have much to say. I'm sorry, I'm like fading. But basically, Vic articulated a lot of my concerns about open streets. And it's not the concept of open streets per se. I support that. I have issues with how this has been implemented. And, you know, it seems to be the mentality, break first and apologize later. And that's not a democratic process. You know, and as you know, because I emailed you and I emailed Karen Nieves, you know, I have an idea about a street over in my community, which would actually be well suited to be perhaps, you know, a few days on the weekends, an open street. You know, I'm not served by this. I live in a community that does not have any park space for all intents and purposes. You know, so it's sort of interesting just to look at this from that cipher, if that makes any sense to you. In any case, I'd like to initiate the dialogue about my idea regarding DuPont and, you know, maybe next month, maybe the month after that. It's winter, you know, it can wait. That's it. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather. You know, we've spoken offline a couple times, I'm following your threads. I think it deserves a more serious discussion at either the February or March meeting. So you can expect to hear about it then. And with that, we are going to move on. Anybody in the chat that didn't, or attendees that didn't get a chance to speak, please email the board office. I'll put a link in the chat to my attention or the Transportation Committee's attention, and we'll put it in the record or follow up as necessary. Okay, so let's move on. Again, thanks to all the agencies. I will ask the 2 NYPD captains to stay on just for these next 2 items. And the next 2 items, and thanks for everybody for the public that came in for Open Streets. I appreciate it and apologize if you didn't feel heard, but we do hear you and we're trying to keep on top of it. And next month it will be on the agenda again, so come back for more of this fun. Okay, item 2 was safety measures. You know, there's been a lot of concern before and since the death of Sarah Pitts at the intersection of Wythe and Williamsburg Street. This has come up when we've talked about the redesign of the exit off the BQE there, and this is particularly for Captain Vasquez. You know, we've been talking to DOT a lot about, you know, what the best redesign is for that intersection. It's something that's going to take a serious look at. But one of the things that the board is most concerned with is implementing safety measures now that can be done. And I think at the moment, the majority of that comes down to enforcement, particularly that intersection for a lot of illegal turns, a lot of blocking the box, you know, all kinds of stuff that happens at that intersection that I'm sure, Captain, you're aware of. But can you talk a little bit about how you're focusing on that area around that BQE exit, and then I'll open it up to the board for questions. And just, it's 8:30 now, so I know this is a hot topic. Ryan, I'm looking at you. And I know that this is stuff that is of major concern, and I am not putting it down. We're going to keep talking about this, but I just want to kind of limit this to maybe, you know, 20 minutes at most, okay? So, Captain, if you're there, if you can weigh in. Oh, God. Did we lose Captain Vasquez? Marie, do we have him?
I believe he's still here. His microphone is open.
You hear me? Hello?
There he is. Okay. Captain, did you hear my question?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Since the fatality occurred at that intersection, we have written summonses a month after, up to a month after that collision happened. We did send in engineering recommendations to DOT as far as trying to get a bike light to show the red signal on the bike lane, because I think the issue is the street lights, you may not be able to see them while you're under the underpass on your bike. So the biggest issue was, you know, running a steady red light while on a bicycle, and the cars are not going to see you coming out from that tunnel. So I think that recommendation would help. We did get another recommendation for new pavement markings for the bike lanes, and that's pretty much all we have right now. As far as summonses are concerned, we're way down from last year because of COVID. We haven't really been doing traffic enforcement as much as 2019 due to the lockdown, and as well as using our traffic officers for other issues during the protests, and flying out officers from each precinct. So they were backfilling patrol. But we have picked up summons enforcement with vehicles in regards to bike lanes, and as well as bicyclists in general.
Okay, thank you, Captain. Let's go to committee members. And Ryan, God, why so slow, Ryan? Come on, go ahead.
I was waiting. I was giving everyone else.
Good job.
So, enforcement. I sent you the question ahead of time. I don't know if this is a question for both the captain and Rhonda. There's buses that use the bike lane as a parking spot. Are they DOT approved? They're private buses, they're school buses. The other night I have pictures I can send of a school bus parked right where Sarah was hit. I know that a lot of the discussion likes to be about whether or not she ran a red light. It was 12:30 at night, but she was hit by a bus that had been parked in the bike lane. She was going around it and she got hit. So my question is, does the police ever ask those buses to move? And I'll tell you this, I used to go to my dance studio. I go to Home Depot a lot. I am on that street, both car and bike, multiple times a day. I have recordings from almost every single day because I know the answers to these questions. There's never NYPD there. It's a huge mess. The other day, there was a truck that overturned on the BQE and blocked the BQE, and that whole Williamsburg West area that we talked became a 2-hour logjam because everyone was blocking the box, and there was zero even sort of thought for anyone from NYPD to come down and sort of deal with it. And it was frustrating. I was in a car at the time, which is sort of hilarious. But there was an NYPD traffic person that came and just like rode through it, but didn't. To me, it's just like this area constantly gets backed up during rush hour because of school buses from all of this. But as a cyclist, when you're in the bike lane, I'm just like, there is, I don't know, again, this. And then I would like Rhonda to answer the question about the buses, because to me, it's like, if we're going to talk about the direct safety of the people who are biking there, are buses allowed to park in that bike lane? And if they're not,
The answer is no, they're
okay,
not.
So they're not. So it's a bus stop for a private bus line. They regularly are parked there for massive amounts of time, and school buses, like private yeshiva buses, that are there nonstop parked. And I'm like, is there ever going to be enforcement of the thing that killed this woman and puts all of us that cycle there in danger every single time?
Hey, so Captain Vasquez, I'm going to answer that. I was there that night. I did not see a bus in that lane, and as well, it's on the report as well. So I don't know where you're getting that information, that there was a bus parked there, that you went around. That's the first time I'm hearing that.
A bus hit her. No, the bus that hit her was parked there and was pulling out and hit her.
The bus was actually on the side. She was going under the tunnel. The bus was going through the light. It wasn't parked. It was actually driving through the light. And if you want to see that report, you could come to the precinct and I could show it to you. As far as the yellow, and it wasn't a yellow bus. You're talking about the yellow school buses.
Okay, so all right. So I stand corrected on that. My question now, they have said that no one's allowed to park there and use that as a bus stop, and it is used as a bus stop. That's why that bus was there. That's why is a bus stop being allowed to happen every single day, all day long, all night long, in a bike lane?
If you're talking about the yellow buses, we have done enforcement on the yellow buses. We also refer it to DOT and the traffic. Traffic agents are usually the ones who write parking summonses.
It's not just yellow buses. There's a Mazzy travel bus that uses that as a bus stop every single day. They have like 5 stops a day, and they're parked there. People unload and offload and constantly are in that bike lane for huge amounts of time.
Okay, this is the first time I'm hearing of this, but we can
So
have
you
our
guys don't ever drive through there and see? I mean, I can literally because I go through every day and take a picture, like a picture from every single day. And you're telling me as a captain, you've never gone through and seen that. I asked you to go stand there for an hour because this is, to me.
White Avenue is usually one of our highest collision prone locations where we write about 30% of our summonses. So to say there's never police officers there,
It's not stopping the dangerous behavior. I mean, okay.
Captain, can I ask a question?
Okay, hang on, Simon. Hang on, Simon. Captain, do you just want to finish your thoughts on this item?
Yeah, like I was saying, our officers do write summonses on White Avenue by those entrances and exits on the BQE. That's one of our heaviest locations for moving violations out of all locations in the precinct. That bus that's stopping there and letting people off, I'll talk to my traffic safety officers, see if they actually wrote summonses specific for that incident. I don't have that with me, obviously, and I did not get that question prior to this meeting. This is the first I'm hearing about this. Okay, so yes, we do enforce there on White, and as far as the overturned tractor trailer, cops probably were passing by because they had to get to that scene. That's the priority. And when the BQE is backed up from a truck overturning, yes, you're going to have a lot of traffic on the exits and entrances. That's just that's just traffic in nature. Other than that, I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
Captain, how often do you do an actual targeted enforcement where you just sit cars at that exit and write all day?
Our traffic safety officers do it based on where our collisions are. So White Avenue was one of our major collision locations, so they would write there as well as other locations in the precinct. So they do self-initiated enforcement based on different locations depending on where our collisions are for the current period, which is a 28-day period. When we get the stats down and it shows where our most dangerous intersections are. Right now, I can tell you it looks like the top 10, White is not on there at this moment. So it's probably not, there probably hasn't been a cop there in the last 28-day period because they're riding at other locations. But like I said earlier, due to COVID and due to the protests and everything else going on this year, our summons enforcement has been down substantially for 2020. And that's because the traffic officers were used for other purposes as well as patrol officers. So they're back out now doing traffic enforcement. And yes, White Avenue is one of the locations that they do hit. And after the collision happened where the young lady lost her life, we did have enforcement there 24/7 for the 28-day period. So what usually happens is we'll do heavy enforcement and engineering recommendations, which we've done, and we've sent over to DOT. So we're hoping that those engineering recommendations are met and we can correct issues at that intersection.
Okay, thank you. And, so we're going to come back to this intersection over the next couple meetings, maybe not the next one, but Captain, if we could work with your NCOs to figure out targeted enforcement for this location, either, just to get more data on how often it's happening, and if you're planning on scheduling them, just because there is so much concern about this intersection. We really do want to improve the citywide, obviously, but we know that this is a problem area, and we just want to kind of double down on getting it, getting it fixed in the meantime until we can fix it with infrastructure. And so, that said, I want to go to Simon and then Karen. Simon, go.
First of all, thank you, Captain, and thank you, Chair. So I have a question. It's very encouraging to see that when this terrible accident happened, is that the police does send recommendations to the DOT, and hopefully this is the recommendation that the police ask the DOT to implement that should make it safer. But is it possible, Captain, to know exactly the accident which occurred? The bus was coming down Williamsburg east, or what was the situation? How did you get hit, this bicyclist?
Yeah, Simon, I don't want to get into listen to me. I don't want to I do not want to get into the specifics of this accident when we are talking about overall safety measures. We can talk about this accident all day, all night.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question, because we've made recommendations based on this accident. If we know the facts, then it's different. We can't just make recommendations and create a whole. We just found out from the
recommendation was not made. It was a response to this accident, but it is a problem that has existed for a long time.
My point is that if the bus was passing a green light, she passed a red light, fine. Mistakes happen, and it happened. But we made certain recommendations to the DOT and the police department based on this accident. We want to know the facts. What's wrong to know? We just heard from the captain that she passed a red light. I'm sorry. So why can't we get the facts clear? What happened there? So I'm asking clearly, what exactly happened? The bus was going through a green light. It wasn't coming out of a stop. I mean, the whole story just changed. Again, it doesn't make a difference. A life was lost. It's terrible. But we do want to know the facts. I don't understand why you always go around the bush. Let's get the facts from the captain, please.
Again.
Hello?
Yeah, Captain, if you can answer that briefly, but or can you make that report available to the board so we can, stop? I hate to say this, but we keep getting bogged down in the details of this particular accident, which crash, death. But this accident happened because of problems that exist at this intersection, and not because a cyclist may or may not have run a red light, or if there was a bus parked in the thing. There are a lot of different factors that go into the safety issues at this intersection. And so to get bogged down in this one particular death on this item is not helping us fix the whole problem. And, I'm sorry to be upset about this, but, this is the reality that we're dealing with here. So Captain, sorry, but is it possible for you to make the report available through a link or something so that we can submit this to the board? And then if you want to just very briefly answer Simon's question.
I think I have to speak to the highway unit to see if the investigation is definitely closed. As far as getting a report, it's probably going to have to go through a FOIL request, but I could look into, possibly trying to release it to the public. Yeah, you're right. The intersection is a problem with visibility. The tunnel is obviously dark. It's hard to see when you're approaching that intersection, especially if you're a bicyclist on that bike lane. You're not really going to see the cars coming northbound on Williamsburg Street East or southbound on Williamsburg Street West. It's obviously a visibility issue, which is why we requested to get a bike light there, which would show a red signal for a bike or a green signal or yellow signal for a bike. We want the bicyclists to know, hey, listen, it's a dangerous intersection. If we see a light there, we can stop, wait for the cars to go. When I get steady green, I can go through. And that's not going to solve the problem either, because you could be on a bike and have steady green, and a car could just run the red light and hit you and not see you. And the issue is, like I said, is visibility. So I don't know if there's maybe an extension we could do with a barrier where a bicyclist or a pedestrian could actually walk into the intersection and see down the street to see if any cars are approaching. That's something we could also do. I know it'll be a hard engineering thing to do at that intersection because it's a lot of traffic. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's no disputing what happened at that incident. She didn't. Sarah Pitts did not have the steady red light. She did have steady red light, excuse me, and the bus had a steady green light. I mean, there's video evidence of this, and it's unfortunate. And I don't want to blame anyone. You shouldn't blame the bicyclist. You shouldn't blame the driver. At the end of the day, everyone has to be cognizant of when they're driving or bicycling within New York. But yes, that intersection needs certain engineering fixes to make it safe. I could write 3,000 summonses there. It's not going to make it safe, okay? Because we can't be there 24/7 writing summonses. It has to be something engineering-wise that could prevent a car or bicyclist, entering the intersection at the same time where they're not going to be aware of each other.
Captain, thank you very much, and thank you for putting in those requests for the light and the paint. Karen, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'm getting it. Sorry, guys. I have so much feedback and issues today. Again, I want to go back to the bike lane, and I want to go back to why the buses are parking and stopping in the bike lane. And maybe this is, a question for DOT, but why can't we put Jersey barriers or something to protect the bike lane so that it will stop actually the buses from using it as a parking lot?
This is Rhonda, and I also want to say that this is the first I'm hearing that there's that they're using it as a bus stop to load and unload. I knew that buses were constantly laying over there, but I didn't know that they were using it as an active bus stop. I've never heard that before. As far as putting Jersey barriers on the against the bike lane, that's not something we could do with the design as it is in the current state, because without a partner who would be able to clean the bike lane, there's not enough room to get a broom in there or a plow. So this came up more than once, and without a partner there that's able to consistently remove debris and snow, it's not an option. We can't put a barrier up the way the design is now. It's unfortunate, but
Okay, so if we do find a partner, then it's possible that you could put the Jersey barriers up and prevent this from happening.
I was told by the bike group that that would be a whole nother conversation if there was a partner. Yeah. I
This
can't
is
sit
good
here
to
and
know.
guarantee it, but
No, I know, but this was the first that I've heard. So that's great. So then I think Ryan and everyone should start looking into, or TA should start looking into a partner if possible, and get that bike lane protected and stop these buses from parking there.
Eric, can I
Go ahead, Will.
just on that point, underneath the overpass, there is the bike lane, there's a buffer, there's the 2 lanes of traffic, and then on the north side of the street, there is like a 6-foot buffer that's just painted with yellow stripes. So would it be possible for DOT to look at the configuration so that you could move those 2 lanes further over and have a full lane, like a buffer and a lane that's big enough for the bikes and big enough for DSNY to get in there?
we are currently looking at the design there. You know, I'm not the
Excellent.
person that's doing it, but yes, we are reevaluating the design there to
Very
see
good.
what can be done to make it, if it's possible, to make it protected. But I mean, I was answering the question basically, why can't we, and this has come up, why can't we just drop barriers there now? And so that was the answer, you know, that's why we can't, but we are looking to do a redesign.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Will, you good? Okay. So that has been 20 minutes. I am sorry to cut this short, but we're not forgetting about this. We're going to bring it up at a future meeting. And we have gotten some good information from you, Captain Vasquez. I really appreciate that you've increased your summonses and have asked for paint and lights there. Be interested to hear. I'll follow up with you offline about incident reports and some of the other stuff we've talked about, and targeted enforcement with the NCOs. So thank you very much. And then does anybody else have anything on this issue? I know it's a hot issue. It's making me hot, but we're gonna chip away at this until we get a real fix for this intersection, both from a design point of view and an enforcement point of view. So don't think this is going away. It's not. Okay, so I do see Kevin has his hand up. If there's anybody else from the public, I will entertain 1-minute comments for the next 5 minutes. Kevin, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Which Kevin are we talking about?
I'm sorry, Kevin Lachera.
Okay.
Hello. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody. One question that I had, the recommendations that the captain sent along, is there a way, it might just be something very simple, and I'm showing my own ignorance of this. Is that something that can be shared with the CB1 Transportation Committee, what the NYPD recommendations were for that space? I guess that's my first question. If the captain is still here, again, I don't know what the strictures are in that regard, but that would be a request. Also, I just want to say very briefly, and Eric, I appreciate you acknowledging that it's like, this is hot and everybody's feeling hot about it. It is very, very frustrating, when this happens. And, Sarah was a person that I did not know personally, but many, many, many people that I know were good friends with her. And I think it is absolutely, like, I don't have any other word. It's gross. It's ghoulish. It is awful for this bizarre wink and a nod. Like, well, we're just asking questions about what she was doing there. And, maybe she was responsible, that just desperate to pin the tail, to blame Sarah Pitts for the death of Sarah Pitts, and not to blame the design that this entire community knows is bad. Everybody knows that it's bad. And, like, Simon, I'm sorry, but it's like, I just say to myself, that it's wrong,
Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
Okay,
over
yes.
a minute. I get your point.
And the lights and the DOT.
You there?
Sorry.
Kevin, what the captain has recommended to DOT will be in the report, and then I will be following up with him this week. So that'll all be in the report as to what NYPD has shared with DOT at this intersection, okay?
And briefly, is it possible to get emergency lighting under the BQE? Sorry, Eric. Is it possible to get emergency, like, without a comprehensive redesign, is it possible to just get proper lights installed in the tunnel? You know, I mean, that's, you know, NYPD can string up lights, no problem.
Can we
for,
move
you know,
on,
number-
please? Put the
That's-
question in the chat so they can deal with it later.
That's
Thank
the
you.
question. That's the question.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I'll follow up on that. Anybody else? Committee? Okay, thank you. Captains, I'm going to ask you to bear with us for just a little while longer. Simon still here?
Yes.
All right, Simon, item 3 is yours. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So again, I just want to make I just want to make.
And let me just say we're going to limit this. Simon, I'm sorry. We're just going to limit this to 15 minutes at the very maximum, because we still have all the new business. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Simon.
The issue is like this. Every couple of years, all the organizations that represent bikers, we get together and there's discussion about bike safety, you know, wearing helmets, having a light, following the street laws. And I mentioned to you, Eric, and also I mentioned the board a couple of times that maybe now's the time when we hear so many accidents. I'm not blaming anybody. It's a comment to discuss ways of you know, safety measures, education, enforcement. You know, we have enforcements for autos. We should have also enforcement for bikers as well. The same token. We don't want to blame anybody. Make it very clear. It's just, you know, comprehensive plan. Every couple of years, there's some kind of enforcement, education. That's why when I you know, bring this up to the captains, and you know what is done to make the street safer. Because as I mentioned before, I've got a lot of complaints from pedestrians that have been hit by bikers going opposite way on the street, passing red lights. Again, not all of them. We're just talking some, and somehow they feel there's no enforcement. A car gets a ticket. I mean, we don't see much enforcement being done on bikers to follow the street laws when they disobey them, and not many, but when it does happen, it's you know, people are maimed for sometimes for weeks. I mean, I've seen myself a bike hit the person, was thrown on the floor. Thank God it wasn't so serious, but some of them just don't obey the law and they get away with it. Again, same thing with autos. I mean, it's the same situation, but a car gets a ticket, he has points. The bike is somehow, some of them, again, not all of them, some could feel they could get away with it. So I'm just, you know, what kind of enforcement, what the local police and also the other organizations that advocate for bike safety, there should be some kind of, every few years they come out with some programs for some safety measures for the bikers. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I think I saw Will's hand raised first, Ryan. I know you're chomping at the bit.
I don't know where to begin with this. I mean, honestly, it's not the same thing, Simon. Hundreds of people are killed every year by automobiles, and cyclists do get tickets. So it's just not. I just can't understand how we can have this conversation. It's not the same thing. I can't even. I mean, I just want to do a survey of everybody who's on the call. Who knows somebody who's been killed because of an automobile? Raise a hand. who knows anybody who's been killed by a bicycle? It's not the same thing. Yes, it's an issue, but there's like hundreds of other issues that impact community safety. And it's just not comparable to lump it in with automobiles. And that's all I'm going to say, because it is like, it's very emotional for people like myself and so many others who've lost somebody because of an automobile, for you to compare like running through a stop sign as the same thing on a bicycle. So I'm sorry, I just don't have the patience for it.
Thank you, Will. Ryan?
Okay, first, yes. Why, like, again, how this whole thing was framed is problematic. But I'm going to say they do have that. There's this thing called the Bike Month, where the city goes out and does massive education. They put out materials all the time. All these things that you want to exist do exist and are implemented all the time. But that won't stop what happens on the street until we design them to be safe. Now, every time we bring forward like designs for South Williamsburg to make the streets safer, the Hasidic community stops them. So again, there's more contention in that part of the neighborhood because there's no street design at all. The bike lanes end, they magically disappear. We don't have any city bike. None of like the education doesn't happen down there because I mean, again, I don't know. I think that you pay attention every couple of years. There's ghost bikes put up every month. There's annual memorials. There's city council hearings. There is so much discussion about bike safety. For you to come and say that every couple years people pay attention when we put up ghost bikes for every single person that dies, and in this neighborhood, in our community board, we have a higher rate than most of the city. It's because anyways, yes, bike safety is talked about. And it's, again, if we spent 10 minutes talking about like who is killed and hurt, the conversation about bikes would be like 10 seconds and it'd be 9 minutes about cars and trucks. And it's constantly offensive. Like, I want to have a discussion about education with car drivers. It's again, it doesn't solve anything, and it's silly, and it's constant, and it's not every couple of years that we talk about it. Some of us talk about it every day. And I will say that when the Glauber family was killed on Kent Avenue, stoplights were put in, and that problem was solved in 4 months with no community discussion because a family died. And I would like to see one of the bikers, one of the hundreds that have been killed, get the same thing. One, not one, not one. So when you talk about what's offensive, constantly this discussion is very offensive, and many of us on this call have lost friends to people who made illegal U-turns, who didn't look. And for you to constantly say that there's people that are maimed by bikers, please bring them to the next meeting because they do not exist. It's a myth, and I'm tired about talking about myths when my real friends are dead.
Thank you, Ryan. Committee, anyone? Okay. Public? Anybody in the public with hands raised that I can't see? Is that Elliot? Drabble?
Hello.
Elliot Drabble, going once?
Yes.
Yes.
That has been.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to push back against the idea that there's any kind of accountability for drivers at this point, because I'm on my bike quite frequently, and you could probably stand at any red light or any stop sign, and you would notice that every single one of these drivers would get a ticket. And I have to totally agree with Ryan on the point that, you know, and previous people on the committee who spoke earlier, that when a driver breaks the law and someone gets hit, they're not around to complain about it because they die horribly. And if you get hit by a bike, which, you know, I've biked more myself, like I probably biked every street in this community district, and I've never seen anything like that before. There's no accountability for drivers. I could write 311 complaints all day and nothing would ever happen. And it's just very sad that if I end up being killed on a road here, that I will end up being blamed for it in the end.
Okay, thank you, Elliot. Anybody else from the public? Captains Fahey and sorry, timer. Velasquez, can you just because it's on the agenda as it's on the agenda, just explain what you do regarding bike safety, and then maybe are you seeing a difference when you're writing cyclists e-bikes versus city bikes versus private riders? And the only reason I ask this is because you know, there's a lot of different bike uses right now, and I don't know how to get at this problem. If it's a problem of businesses not, you know, reining in their delivery drivers, or Seamless not, you know, their drivers are like racing on their e-bikes to get somewhere or whatever, you know, if the danger lies in a particular perceived danger, let's say that, in a particular place, you know, maybe there's a way, and yes, I understand that street design is the true key, but, you know, as long as we're having this conversation, is there anything that you can offer? And I'm just going to leave it there because these are questions that have come to me, and so I want to, you know, have them out there. Go ahead.
Hi. So to be understanding, due to COVID, enforcement on cyclists and cars, you know, took a dive in 2020 for to limit exposure was one reason, but especially because of all the financial difficulties businesses were experiencing. Basically, you know, we were not heavy-handed with any type of bikes. In the 9.4, I'm sure in the 9.0, a lot of them are delivery personnel. So it was a relaxed enforcement with the bicycles. Traditionally, especially because of all the bicycle riders that are in Greenpoint, you know, my position would be to deal with this in an educational way rather than an enforcement, you know, take an enforcement tactic with it. Again, we were limited in what type of educational drives we could have for most of the year because of COVID. So going forward in 2021, you know, as hopefully the virus abates, we'll be able to put together, you know, through the NCOs, do some more educational components at the Build-A-Block meetings, and hopefully set up, you know, opportunities for the community to work together for both sides, for the bicyclists and the motorists. You know, quite honestly, motorists are licensed, you know, they have insurance. You know, we could talk all day about mistakes that are made on either side. However, you know, when it's a mistake, you know, no matter who makes the mistake, it's going to more often result in a fatality for the cyclist. So, you know, we have to keep that in mind. And, you know, driving is a privilege. I think, you know, motorists owe it to the members of the community, the bicyclists moving through, to exercise, you know, every precaution. So, you know, that being said, accidents are still going to happen, you know, but we have to take a very hard look. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, I'm in support of being, you know, stricter with the motorists rather than the bicyclists, because the motorists are the ones that bear that responsibility when they're getting behind those vehicles.
Thank you, Captain. That's great. Captain Velasquez, do you want to weigh in? You still here?
Maybe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, we don't write bicyclists at the rate that we write drivers. That's just not unrealistic. Not to say we haven't written bicyclists, we have. And some of them we usually do write bicyclists are usually like really reckless operation. That would be like, you know, blatantly running several red lights, driving down the wrong way, you know, just leaving down the car, stuff like that. That's usually what guys enforce. They really don't enforce people who are in the bike lane, you know, riding their bikes responsibly. But the majority of our subjects are to vehicles. Now, obviously, like Kathleen Fahey said, you know, the vehicles are what's going to hurt people, pedestrians and bicyclists. You know, bike versus a car, the car is always going to win. So, you know, education-wise, we want bicyclists to understand that, you are on a bicycle, you're not going to win against a car, and just keep that in mind, and make sure you obey the rules of the road as a vehicle. Now, the VTL, New York State VTL, and the traffic rules specifically state that bicyclists are, bikes in general are supposed to operate on the road just like vehicles are. So you have to stop at lights, you have to let pedestrians cross, and just like a motor vehicle, you have to follow the same rules of the road. I don't think a lot of people know that ride bikes. A lot of the more avid bike riders understand that, but some of the younger kids and people who don't really ride too often probably don't understand that. Delivery guys, yes, especially the mopeds, they do ride recklessly sometimes, and we do write summonses. But vehicles are in far more at a rate with summonses than bicyclists. We really go after the motorists, and if you look around, you can just drive. Me driving home every night, I see reckless driving all over the place. On the highway, on the roadways, people taking lights, stop signs. It's definitely become more reckless since COVID happened. People are just driving pretty much with no regard for anyone's safety. But that's something that we're addressing, and we're picking up enforcement. It was a problem earlier in the year to conduct enforcement because we had other issues to deal with. But we are picking up that enforcement. We do have our traffic teams out there. We are doing initiatives to make sure we write summonses at the right locations where we know we're getting collisions, or we know we have issues, and hopefully through engineering recommendations and education and enforcement, we can make a couple of changes and make sure things are improved for the better.
Okay, great. Thank you, Captain. Okay, anybody else from the Karen? Go ahead.
No, I just want to say this feedback today's driving me nuts. I just want to say, I've been on the board for 10 years. I was chair of the Transportation Committee for 6 years. And this has been an ongoing debate when it shouldn't be a debate. Okay, motorists are ton vehicles that kill not only cyclists, but also pedestrians. And I think it's our obligation as a city, as a citizen, as a community board, as a community as a whole, to make sure that we make our streets as safe as possible for all users, not just for cyclists and not just for pedestrians, everyone. With that being said, I do want to point out that despite cyclists don't cause deaths, they do hurt people. They break bones. And I know 2 people. One, her collarbone was broken and she had no insurance. Another one was an elderly person on Leonard Street that broke her wrist and her hip while she was trying to cross the street on Leonard. So I want to be mindful. Again, this isn't, there is no comparison when it comes to, vehicles killing cyclists. But I think, again, we need to, as a community, continue, as, the captain said, please, let's continue to do educational outreach. When I was chair, I did a bike bonanza. We did a helmet giveaway in McCarran Park. And my son was an Eagle, when he was going for his Eagle Scout, he did a Vision Zero pedestrian safety. Okay, and actually had a truck come into St. Francis parking lot so that they could go around the truck and, people could see the blind spots. So I think we could do our part, but it's up to every single person to do theirs. And you're going to have bad drivers and you're going to have good drivers. But the only thing that we can do is build the infrastructure to make it as safe as possible here in our community. That's all I have to say. So, let's do the best that we can and make sure that our streets are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Chair, I'd like to make-
Couldn't agree more.
Can I make a final point?
Go ahead, Simon.
Okay, first of all, I want to make it very, very clear. First, I would like to make very clear that we have to thank all the previous chair and the current members, Ryan, Willis, and just heard from the previous chair. I'm sorry, I forgot the previous chair that about the importance of safety measures that have been implemented throughout the years. And I want to make very clear, it's not against bikers as a whole. We're just trying, I mean, every time when this issue was brought up at the general meeting, at the local police meeting, as was just mentioned, people have been hit by bikes, maybe not be killed. Again, I'm not saying it's instance happen. We're not saying as a whole bikers. And to make for the record, I don't know what Ryan was saying that this community, this side of the community, which I live, some safety measures were compromised. I don't know what you was referring to because there's Kent Avenue, there's a special lane. But many avenues have specific bike lanes. I don't know what you're referring to. But again, we're all in this together. We're not one group against the other. You know, we're all part of this. We're here to make better safety for all. It's a biker, if it's an auto driver, it's a pedestrian. And it's very hurtful to see that people get hurt when we bring about this issue. It's again, clearly, we all friends, we're all this together. It's not me, we're all this together. And again, we have to thank all the current board members, the previous board members, the current chair, the previous chair, putting so much into safety, all safety issues, and for bikers. So again, please, don't take my recommendations as an insult. I'm just trying to make better for all. That's it. And I appreciate for bringing up this topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I see Tom Huzik in the public that wants to say something. Does anybody on the committee, before I go to Tom, have a comment? No, okay. Tom, go ahead.
Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of good points have already been made, so I'm just going to chime in with a few more thoughts. There's obviously a false equivalency happening here where we're comparing the law breaking of vehicles that can do a lot of damage and are known to do a lot of harm, and people on bikes who are themselves struggling to maintain their own safety on streets. We know when a lot of bicyclists who do run reds or are kind of rolled through stop signs are doing so for their own safety. It's almost always safer to get ahead of traffic than to wait for a light to turn green and have to negotiate space with large vehicles when you're on a small bike. But the point is, the literature around Vision Zero makes it very clear that when we design streets to accommodate all modes, that actually decreases law breaking. So instead of calling for enforcement, really we should just be calling for a mass redesign of all of our streets. And if we are trying to decrease the rate of law breaking, I would like to point everyone to Senate Bill 920 that's going through the state Senate right now. It would basically introduce what's colloquially known as the Idaho Stop to New York State, which would allow bicyclists to treat stop signs as yield signs, as long as they do so safely, and to treat traffic lights as stop signs. So you stop at the intersection, you make sure it's clear, and you continue through, which would increase safety and decrease conflicts. So if you want to decrease law breaking, change the law so that the streets can actually accommodate this new mode of transportation that has taken the city by storm. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. And that was 920, right? Still there? Anybody? I'll put a link to that that legislation in the report so that if anybody wants to read it, they can and lobby for it as private citizens in our democracy. Okay, so nice. Thank you, Tom. So those of you following the chat, the link is in the chat, but I'll also make it part of the report. Anybody else on this? Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear about it, but we really do need to double down on street design before we get into who's at fault. So that's all I'm going to say about it. All right. Old business, anybody? Going once, going twice. New business? Ryan Cronin.
I had emailed you, but I wanted to talk about Graham and Metropolitan. I don't think Rhonda's on anymore, but I would love to know if DOT, again, when we have a cyclist death, does DOT go out immediately and check it out? This is an intersection where it's now the second death in 3 years ago, we had same intersection, both by big vehicles. That intersection has lots of pedestrians. It has a city bike. It has all sorts of things, and it's deadly dangerous. And I don't think anyone's on, so maybe we put it officially on for next month, and then we can put together our questions for them specifically.
Yeah, that's fine, right? I knew it was going to be a long meeting, and I didn't want to tag it in for something as important as that. So yeah, we'll look at it next month. Okay. And did I respond to your email?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'll make a.
I sent it Christmas Eve, so I hope.
Yeah. I'll make a point to get back to you on it. Okay.
I mentioned it earlier, but I would like us to follow up with NYPD about Mr. Morris's death at Driggs and Metropolitan. He was killed by an SUV that ran through the intersection. He had the green light. And again, when you read the articles about this, it points to unsafe driving by the NYPD. Again, they're having an investigation and still, but the witnesses in these things and the family's been calling for justice. And I just think that this is something that we spent a lot of time tonight talking about whether or not emergency vehicles can get someplace fast enough. And this, was something that turns out they were responding to a fake 911 call about a gunshot in front of a new restaurant on our street where there was just people hanging out outside. So it was a fake 911 call about a gunshot to get NYPD to respond to noise at 7 p.m. Regular noise, not even any noise. And so again, the NYPD was racing and went around a car. And I think that we cannot let something like that go under just because it was someone on a motorcycle, or that, I don't know, I just feel like that this is our community deserves answers to what happened on all of that, and not just to have it disappear into it's being investigated for a million months.
I believe that Captain Vasquez may have had the call, but I do believe that there's pending litigation on this as well. So, we're very limited in what we can say. You can make an official request through the legal bureau, but from our standpoint as precinct commanding officers, I believe Mark will follow up and see whether we can release the report. But the last update we had was that it was, there was a notice of claim filed. So we have to be guided by our legal bureau.
And I would say my question isn't even necessarily to involve NYPD in the discussion, maybe more community discussion about when we call 911, all these type of things too. Because again, to me, some of the most horrific part of this story is the fact that it was in response to a fake 911 call. And again, to me, it's very personal because it's the restaurant on my street. And it just happens to be a Black-owned restaurant that Black people hang out at. And there was a fake 911 call saying there was a gunshot. And to me, it just smells of things that, I don't know. So maybe it's not even a transportation issue, actually. And the area, anyway.
Ryan, that's very fair. And in light of the bigger conversation about, defunding the police and what the police should have a role in, I think that's a very important conversation.
Maybe
another committee,
safety,
for another committee meeting. But we did see an increase of 311 calls. Primarily targeting a segment of the population that maybe community members didn't want to see around here. So I'm happy to speak to that in a different forum. But I do agree with you.
Thanks, Captain, and thanks, Ryan. Yeah, maybe that's a public safety thing, not to put more on Tom's plate, but I'm putting more on Tom's plate. Anybody else? Karen, were you making motions? No, you're tired. Okay, we're all tired. So again, this meeting ran. I know. So, in response to several complaints addressed to me personally in the chat, I will work on a better system of expediting these meetings. And also, I'm usually trying to get as many people in for comments as possible, but we have to figure that out too. Either, board members get a 2-minute time limit and have to have their, you all get the agenda in advance. You all know what you want to say. Submit stuff for the record, like we can reference it in the meeting or whatever, but I'm terrible with time management anyway, so trying to run 3 devices and keep an eye on the chat. So I do apologize, but we'll streamline this, and by the time we get it right, we'll be back to the meeting live, hopefully. So there's that. Who's talking?
Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead, Captain, please.
It's helpful if Vasquez and I have the questions in advance that would require statistics to not eat up more of the time. Anyone can email me directly in advance if they want to go through the committee. Certainly, I'm working from home. I think Captain Vasquez is in transit. So, not having the full resources in front of us, if we have it, even a couple of days before, we'd be able to give you a lot more informed information.
Sure thing. And both captains, I want to really thank you for sticking it out for the whole 3 hours on top of your regular duty shift. It's important that you were here to hear what we were all talking about, and I know these are important issues to you. And just thanks for hanging in there. And if there's nothing else, I will close the meeting with a motion to adjourn. Quickly. Okay. Okay. So thanks, everybody. Look out for my 25-page report, the comments and circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back explaining each one for oldsters that get that reference. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year. Have a great night. And thanks to everybody that came in. Okay. Bye-bye.